Our next speaker is Julia Olmstead from Collibra. She's a senior customer engineer, and she will be talking to us about AI starts with trusted data. Trust is the key word, so I'm going to pass it on to you, Julia.
Oh, appreciate it.
Thank you. Please give a round of applause for Julia.
Hello, everyone. My name is Julia Olmstead, and I'm going to be addressing a couple of pieces of how can we start with AI with trusted data. So currently, we're working in a world where we're scaling AI rapidly, but it's building a lot of questions for people. We're here at this conference to answer some of these questions. However, sometimes we make more questions than answers in these typical cases. How many AI use cases are we planning to deploy in our organization? Is there a purpose that we're going to put for these AI use cases? What about the investment, the time, the effort? Do you know how many models are even in deployment currently? Do you know which departments are using them? And how can we make sure that we're ready for terms of compliance, for quality? What about the data that's actually being driven into what we're using today? AI is developed quickly. We went from bicycles. We were using traditional ML. We've been using deep learning. We went to a little bit of more faster pace. We went into a car. We stepped on the gas. When we started deciding, hey, let's use generative AI, we put ourselves in an F1 car, and we stepped down further. When we put this into place, we realized we can go even faster. Let's go into a fighter jet. Let's put this for agentic AI. What can we do? How can we learn to take it to the next step? We've learned how to put our foot on the pedal. But the reality is we haven't really learned how to land a plane. We know how to put brakes in. We know how to step on the brake pedal on a car, but landing a plane is a little different. So right now, the most hope that we come with, and for a lot of organizations, is that they hope to crash land safely. Right now, most people hope, and all this comes with a lot of risk, because without a proper governance into play, strategy, we're without hope. In this place, we're looking for a common objective. Even within F1, it's saying, hey, let's go as fast as possible. We want to reach that finish line, reach our outcome. Every team is going to be pushing its limits. If we're looking for limits of performance, if we can go faster, the reality is that every driver on this track, they all know something fundamental. And this is if acceleration outruns any planes of control, we're going to skid, we're going to crash. And so if our car goes off track, if our plane is now crashing, we have no idea of how to reach our outcome, we have failed. The reality is that 95% of AI projects have already failed. This is a statistic that Gartner has already reported on. Today, we're looking at this in many dynamic ways. Not only are we saying, hey, these AI projects, they're going to be abandoned, not because of the model was wrong, not because of the ambition was wrong, but because the technology failed around it. The governance and the underneath wasn't ready. So what we're saying is what a lot is being built today isn't going to last without the proper foundation. That's because a lot of organizations are accelerating. They're moving really quickly. We see it through the models, through agents, and how can we create a smaller gap when it's widening faster than we can even prepare for. AI initiatives are drifting. And if we're caught off track, not because of what we're doing, but because we haven't actually caught up yet, we need to be able to understand how to put ourselves back on track. How can we take these AI initiatives and put us to a place where we'll be okay again? But the reality is that this happens most of the time because of a lack of, not because of a lack of innovation, but because of a lack of fragmentation that we have across the organization. This fragmentation is across tools and teams, across different organizations that rely on and manage these different risks and these values. And when we're thinking about it, the number of people that are across everywhere that we're working with, our different AI leaders, the business leaders, our data engineers, the risk managers, different regulators that are playing in our field now, This brings a different critical perspective, but this is because they are often working across different systems, different workflows. Their objectives are different between every single department, every team. And at the same time, our AI stack is ever expanding. We have all of our giant cloud providers in the world. We have different data products. We have models, agents, pipelines, monitoring tools that we are not sure exactly how to use and put into play yet because we put in one department and another has no idea that it exists. Each layer introduces more dependencies. Without coordination between all of these different elements, your organization is quickly to find themselves in a situation where AI initiatives are going to be too siloed to scale. They're going to be hard to manage effectively. And without the increasing complexities that are coming at us, and they're coming harder to control, how is this agent actually going to put in this control for this tool that it's calling into my important system for SAP that actually connects to multiple CRMs, and how can I make sure that blast radius is contained? And if nothing is done early, this complexity compounds very quickly. And unfortunately, we have even more statistics that actually back this up. Most organizations aren't just lacking AI-ready data, they don't even know whether they have it. This happens. This is okay because we can actually start with a foundation. It's not just that a data quality problem exists today, there is a visibility problem. You can't fix what you can't see. So if your team's answer is, well, is the data we're training trustworthy? You're in the 63% right here. You're not sure. If you don't have a confident yes, you need to find out. 60% of these AI projects are already abandoned, or they're going to be abandoned within the year of 2026. This is because, again, the reason is never the model. We're now used to using these LLM models. It's been 4 years. We're comfortable. It's that the teams spend months on architecture, prompt engineering, fine-tuning. The failure happens upstream. And this is where a lot of these data scientists in the room will see this happen, is that in the data itself, it wasn't ready. It wasn't documented. It wasn't governed. And now this causes us to have a sunk cost. This sunk cost creates an eroded illusion and also internal confidence. Suddenly, a lot of the things that we were proud about going into AI, knowing that we can build this, puts us increasingly at regulatory risk. It's also something that goes wrong with the model. Nobody can explain it. Previous sessions, we're talking about, hey, explainability is becoming one of the #1 things that we're concerned about. Yes, absolutely is. But on the flip side, there are organizations I've worked with that have done it well. And that's because if they put in the foundation, they succeed. They are succeeding with AI because they're doing it based on the fact that they not only just picked the right vendor, but because they've invested 4 times the amount that they did in AI into doing their foundations, into doing data quality, into doing governance, into lineage. That's not a budget difference. There's a sequencing decision that people must make. There's a foundation before there's scale. Things will crash in production if you don't do them successfully. So I have a question for everyone in this room. Is that which side of this gap you're currently sitting on? Have you already sped off into the ways of AI? Or have you already started putting this foundation into play? Because I've come in to say that there's 3 forces that are converged to make this 2026 problem quite heavy, and it's heavier than ever it was in 2022 when we first looked at LLMs, is that first, we have generative AI. Not only is this consuming more data and fundamentally in different ways than we've ever made governance. It's something that we didn't build governance for originally. The customer interaction logs, the call transcripts, any usage patterns. These aren't queried anymore. They're being embedded. They're being retrieved. They're patterns, and they're reasoned over. We have our lineage, and we have quality, and we have requirements that we need to make happen, not just with SQL queries, because they're not easily mapped into any of this. We need some sort of context layer, not only have other people come up onto the stage and talk to you about context layers and semantic layers, but I'm here to I'll say this again. You need it. Not only are you going to go into your AI and it's not going to fully understand what context you're calling it for unless it actually has a purpose, understands what the data was really for. If you have unit tests and it doesn't understand that the entire repo is unit tests, you can classify it, categorize it. The second part for governance is regulation. It's finally caught up. Not only are we seeing EU Act already in motion, ADA's coming into play in Canada. We're already looking at OSFI E23. OSFI was here today for the fact that they understand that their model risk management program for their financial services is a developed program. The model risk expectations for these financial institutions are already put out. NIST AI RMF is already put out for a reference standard. These are things that these frameworks, if not aligned neatly with each other, they require a lot of documentation that a lot of organizations don't have. Additionally, the third question that comes up into play quite often is what happens in the boardroom? It used to be, can we build this AI in the first place? Can this actually work? Now it's, can we trust it? Will it really work? Because can I actually prove this to not just my organization, but a regulator or a customer or an auditor that comes through the door? And can I for sure say, yes, it's working properly? And can I for sure say with confidence that not only am I going to be able to govern it, but it's going to be done properly? For data governance and AI governance, they're not two separate programs. They're one discipline, operating at two layers. Most organizations are treating them as if they're unrelated. They're siloed. If these continue to happen, your work streams will never be able to close that gap. The only way to do it is to combine these two things. Before I jump into what good governance looks like, let's talk about 3 ways an organization can try to approach it, and why 2 of them are failing and falling quite short. Right now, I'm seeing a lot of the time 3 approaches to this AI governance is that there's a compliance-centric team. It starts with legal and privacy. Their instinct is quite correct. This is the reality that their objectives are a little different from these other 2 teams. Their document obligations, they need to understand risk, get sign-off, but they build governance in a silo. They're often quite manual. And the reality is that the separate process also creates a tendency to cause friction with your AI teams. If you need to feed information after the fact, the result of your documentation and the ways it's way too out of date. You're living inside an Excel spreadsheet, a SharePoint documentation. That's going to be out of date as well. And if you're going to see governance as an overhead, all of your teams are going to see it as friction. It's going to be hard to work with. The second one I see quite often is model ops. This one is typically to start with your engineering team, your AI engineers. In this case, a lot of the time, it's for monitoring drift, managing deployment pipelines, tracking the performance, genuinely governing a model in runtime. But they're not asking who owns it, the use case, what does the data consent look like? Can someone actually access this? And they really shouldn't. Can they access it through another system? Because do you actually know the lineage? A lot of the modeling teams don't. And the model ops will typically answer no. Or whether it's a regulator who needs to review the decision at the time, they need to be able to track and trace back to the data that they had access to. So if you can't govern what they can see in the pipeline, they miss everything upstream in the data world. Data-centric approach, however, it's going to treat data quality, lineage, semantic context as the foundation. This is where you're going to thrive, and this is where I've seen a lot of people thrive. The ones who I've talked about who were successful, who had the foundations into place, they went with a data-centric approach. Because if you can't trust the data, you can't trust the model. You can't trust the system. And if you can't trust it, and you can't trace it, you can't explain it. Explainability becomes essential. Everything is built on it. The reality is that, even in my opinions, and in my experience, my opinion, is that the most mature AI governance programs I've seen are this data-centric model. At their core, compliance and model ops can feed into it. You're no longer working in a siloed approach. It's easiest to work with AI engineering teams who are already being fed data from the data teams and the data-centric approach. It's easier to work with compliance because not only are a lot of compliance that require you, DAMA, OSFI, to look into the different data outcomes and what is happening on the inside of these models and how you're feeding it, they require you to work with a data-centric approach. So why not start there? So don't run parallel to it. Incorporate them, feed it. The organizations that try to bolt compliance on top of a model ops program, and I've seen a lot of different tools do this, one layer or another, this monitoring is going to go into a compliance checklist. It's going to end up with 3 half-baked programs instead of one whole one. So both of these are common approaches, and they share failure. So what it looks like in practice, it's quite common, very common actually. But before I jump into this, I want to see maybe if we can be a little bit more collaborative. I know we just danced, but can we do some quick show of hands of how many of you are primarily in my first path here? You're building new AI use cases, AI agents, models, and you're trying to get the foundation set from the start. Smattering of hands, it's common. Yes, some more hands over here, perfect. Thank you. I love it, I love it. And for path 2, I imagine it's the rest of you. It's that you're already running AI into the organization, more than you probably know. And you're trying to regain visibility and control. There's probably teams out there that you have no idea are using AI just because it's already been approved. And honestly, most of my rooms are either split between a 60-40, or in this case, it's more like a 90-10. And this, I'll tell you honestly, is a lot of people who raised their hands for path 1 are probably in path 2 without them knowing it yet. Someone in another department has already spun up AI. They're using maybe Bedrock 6 months ago, and didn't tell anybody, it's a secret. And nobody registered it anywhere, so you have no idea it's being used. So here's the thing. Both paths have one thing in common. Neither one works without trusted data. If you don't have it underneath, you can't build AI. You can't build it confidently. And you don't know what data is actually good or not. What's the data quality score? Do you even know? I don't. You can't govern AI if you can't see it. So if I didn't know it existed, how could it possibly have a score? So whether you're building new, or if you're building something and working to audit an existing piece, the requirement is identical. And when that requirement is not met, speed tends to outrun. And we end up in that crash phase. Our F1 car goes off the tracks. We're trying to crash land the plane safely. And if we're trying to crash land our plane safely, we end up with something that the industry has given a name to already. Let me show you what that looks like. AI slop. It's not my term. It's something, a part of the industry vocabulary to this day. It refers to the wave of low-quality AI-generated content that is now being produced by scale. It's being consumed at scale. And the worst part is, it's increasingly fed back into AI training pipelines at scale. But I want to use it a little bit more broadly than just content quality. Because what I see in organizations today is an equivalent problem with AI decisions. AI slop is the output of models that were trained on poorly governed data, owned by no one, with no lineage I don't know if this is going to affect the system in marketing. I don't know if it's going to affect somebody in the banking sector or billing or accounting. There's no consent documentation. And absolutely no one can explain what the model actually learned or did anything with, except for this generated low-quality output. So getting the data right is 80% of the work. Teams spend months on model selection, prompt engineering, on actually putting an agentic architecture into place. And then we trace failure back to a training data set that nobody reviewed, or a feature that was built from some sort of data source that was deprecated 2 years ago. Nobody's put a certification on it that, hey, we can trust this, it's still good to go. The core shift required for this is not a technology decision, it's an operating model decision. Stop treating data governance and AI governance as two separate work streams. They are one discipline. The organizations getting this right have made that connection already. And I want you guys to come from here today and make that connection so you can put it into play as well. The ones that haven't, they're producing that AI gap at scale with confidence and with no idea what's happening behind the scenes. So what does a better foundation actually look like? Let me give you 4 things to think about before I leave you for questions and answers of myself. I have some that I prompted for you to think about. And this is for a place for you to think in and feel before you govern any AI at scale. My first pillar is know what's running. You cannot govern what you don't know is there. You need to catalog it. One list, every use case, those named owners, the models, what's actually going on behind the scenes. That's where you start. Pillar 2 is to trace data to decisions. If you can't trace a model output back to its source, the model is not going to be able to explain into plain language why it did something for you. Governance has already failed. You are now going to not be able to explain it, defend it. You can't fix it when it goes wrong. 3 is connect AI to a business outcome. This is why most of those AI projects have failed in the first place, is that it did not reach its outcome. We have 95% have failed. They didn't reach their outcome. They could not go to production. Main reason why is that if a business owner can't explain in plain text and get accountability, get an achieved outcome for your business, it's not worth it. You don't get any ROI from it. Your pillar 4 is to document compliance before you need it, before it's too late, before auditors are already in the room. When a regulator asks, you must answer. Not when something goes wrong, but into the asset record from day 1. You need to be tracking this. Most organizations I talk to, on 1 or 2 of these, the ones that have all 4 are the ones that they've already understood that delivering AI at scale requires this foundation. The gap, the ambition, the results are almost always living in a missing pillar for anyone that I've had talked to and worked with. They did not have all 4. They're missing 1 or 2, maybe all 3 or 4. Maybe they didn't even start. These are things that they needed to put into play to create a strong foundation. So I'm going to leave with you guys today. This is a kind of a framework to start with. There are 4 questions. They're ones I ask in every governance conversation I have, and I want you guys to use them. These are your tools. They're not a methodology. I want you to use it as a mirror. These answers tell you where you actually are, not where you think you are. So you can look over this. This reality is that the governance gap is normal. Everyone in this room is somewhere between 1 and 3. The point is that anyone who's going into this, I don't want you to feel bad, because wherever you're starting for a specific place is completely fine and normal. whether it's a rather vague intention that you want to start something, or that you're going into saying, I need to do more governance because it's going off the tracks fast, or something actually crashed and burned, and then you felt the effect. So my first question here is inventory. The most common answer I get is probably most of them. I can probably find most of them. Probably isn't governed. If you don't have a list, you don't really know. You probably don't actually have any governance set into stone yet. Your second part is lineage. This is one that separates organizations from explaining that their AI has it done something proper or improper. You need to describe it. Explaining requires tracing. What targeted systems did it go through? What tools? Where did it get access to that data? How? Why? Compliance is my third. If I am a regulator and I walked into the door today, into any of your organizations, would you be able to come to me and would you be able to spend the next 3 days finding documents? Would you be able to open a system for me and show me exactly where something actually occurred? Where did the data go for this LLM or agent to give it to me? How do you know it came from this gold consumption layer, the silver layer? What about the bronze layer of that raw data that eventually reached? What other systems is it tied to? And was it able to access any of those tied systems? The fourth one is technical. It's a little bit of a mixture between business accountability and TechLin. This is our governance part where we fail quite often. Nobody really wants to talk about it. It's that models make decisions nobody in the business actually signed off on. And having to see what those systems have been affected later causes quite a bit of a problem. It's not just a technology problem, it's also an ownership problem. How big is that blast radius? So the question I'm going to leave with you is which of these four can I answer with confidence today? And which one can't I? So if you would like to see a little bit more of what that would look like, please visit me. I'll be at the Collibra desk later in the vendor aisle today and tomorrow. If you have some, I'll be opened up for some questions and answers today as well. And also, we have a community that if you're interested in continuing these kind of conversations, we would love to continue these conversations with you on the Collibra community. You can scan our QR code and enter. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was a great session.